fait 13 heures aujourd'hui.
Yeah. Mais bon, il n'y a eu aucune réponse à...
Ce que tu avais posté en ligne. Donc on n'aura personne en ligne aujourd'hui. Même ici.
Même ici, il y avait Patrick Caster de 6300 qui devait être là.
Ouais. Tu es en train d'enregistrer là ou...
Ouais, ça y est, c'est commencé. Ok. Hello, everyone. So this is the last live feedback session for 6300. And I expected to have some discussion topics posted on the forum, but I had none. So I guess I will just give a general feedback and sense of what happened in the class, what should have happened, and maybe try to find how to best handle this online class. Number one, I think that the individual meetings were for the most quite productive. And I think that some of you were able to maybe have a broader understanding of what ATEC is and how they should be working towards their graduation in ATEC, and also make plans for the future. And so I think that part was quite positive and definitely has to remain as a strong component of the online class. The subjective synthesis, here again I have something very positive to say about this. I think that if we look at the all of them for each group, I think that we can definitely see an improvement in the quality of the concepts presented in the subjective synthesis, and a better understanding of what was expected with this type of assignment. The fact of allowing you to pick another topic than the suggested topics for the last one, I think was a good idea, and I will keep that. And this allowed for me to discover new things like 4D printing and such topics. The form of the subjective synthesis being completely left at the discretion of the group, I think it's a good thing, and that allows for more spontaneity in the production of the answer. And that also allows for me something very important to happen, is that the concepts are translated not just in words, which is to me quite easy, but are translated into images and sounds and possibly some actions when we had some video games presented as subjective synthesis. What did not really happen as a support of the subjective synthesis was the kind of dialogue that I'm having today. I was expecting that we could engage during these feedback sessions in a more productive and directly oriented discussion on the topics of the subjective synthesis, and it did not quite happen for reasons that I cannot really analyze right now at the moment. Maybe it's that time on Monday was not for me a quite favorable time, not having time enough to prepare for these sessions. I don't know, I need to explore that. And also what has not been working for these feedback sessions in support of the subjective synthesis is the students' activity on the forum attached to the feedback sessions, where I almost never had a suggestion for a topic to be discussed in these sessions. So it's always difficult to be in a room with Yvan, the teaching assistant for the class, and not knowing exactly what to talk about and what to present you. And so that was quite a difficulty. And the other component of the class was the news reports. And the news report, same thing. I must say that I've been seeing improvement for the second news report produced by each group. And all of them really showed a good understanding of what was expected, which is something that is new, that has been presented recently, but also what was very much necessary was to attach that to ATEC and to what we are doing in ATEC, or more precisely what you students are engaged into doing in ATEC. And that kind of conceptual relationship between the new object that you were presenting and what you were doing or planning to do was actually present in the second news report. And I think I need in the syllabus and other related documents to insist on that necessary structure of the news report. Everything should be organized around that connection or resonance with ATEC. So it has to be not only a conceptual relationship, because it's in the field of arts and technology, but it has to present also a practical relationship, which is, this is something that is happening in ATEC, and here's how that novelty could impact the future of my studies or the future of my career in an arts and technology related environment. But that has been well integrated throughout the semester, and the last news report were good in that sense. The other and last component of 6300 that was not that well explored, a few of you have been actually producing answers to the faculty profiles, and I think this was very much beneficial to see from you, for example, the presentation of a faculty member who was your faculty member in another school in response to an actual faculty member in ATEC, and that really helps, I think, our program to understand better how it is perceived and how it's unique in the landscape of education in arts and technology. So for the next semester I will insist of and in making that activity absolutely mandatory. Students will have to actually pick one of the portraits of the faculty member and look for someone with a similar profile, similar research interest in another institution in the world. And it's not necessarily an educational institution. It can be a research entity, or it can be an industrial entity. Someone in a game production company could very well be presented as a response to a faculty member's portrait in the field of game or virtual environments. So that I will make it mandatory and require only one response to these profiles. And I think that's about it that I can say in general terms. So now in more detailed terms, and especially when it comes to something that obviously all of you are interested in, it's the grades. Okay, for me there's no way to fail someone in a graduate seminar as long as I see an attempt at producing what has been required. Okay, so you can fail in producing something that does not exactly respond to the requirements, but as long as you attempt at doing so, for me there's no reason to penalize you. So very simply, and that will make my life easy, I will double check your participation in the forums and in the various individual activities, check on your presence at the individual meeting, and measure that against my own availability for these meetings, because I know that some of them could not happen on my behalf. I was responsible for not being available for some meetings, so I will factor in all of this and grade you accordingly. As from now, from what I have already seen, I see no one with a grade under A. And I think that's it. And I invited you at considering a paper which I think is very interesting and that really says a lot about ATEC. That paper called On Techno-Aesthetics, and it's a work by the French philosopher Gilbert Simondon, and it talks about a question that we encountered throughout the semester, the question of the relationship between arts and technology, but more precisely the question of relationship between technicity and aesthetics. So that paper, I think it's a very interesting response to these kind of questions. It doesn't mean that this is the answer to all of it, but it's the answer to part of these questions. So I really encourage you reading that text. It's not long, it's about 8 pages. And I have highlighted some very interesting concepts in this. So he's talking about the Eiffel Tower in Paris, which is a technological object, but it's also a work of art. And he very simply says it's technical and aesthetic at the same time. Aesthetic because it's technical, and technical because it's aesthetic. There is intercategorial fusion in here. And I think that's what's interesting, that term that can be seen as vague, this intercategorial fusion, is really what, to me, defines ATEC. So ATEC is not just a relationship between arts and technology. ATEC really is a fusion between these two categories, the category of art and the category of technology, the category of aesthetics and the category of technical and technicity, technical functionality and technicity. And I think that's really a very interesting text. So you have the link on the website, and I think it contains very interesting stuff for you. So he's talking about also the our relationship with techno-aesthetic objects, and he says that it's not only the contemplation that happens when we are looking at these objects, and he's talking about very concrete objects like tools. Okay, he's talking about what object is it? It's talking about a very special type of wrench that was needed by some people. And he says at one point, it's in usage, in action, that the object becomes something different, because there happens something orgasmic, a tactile means and motor simulation. And he says it's a type of intuition that's perceptive, motoric, and sensorial, where the body of the operator gives and receives. And I think that also talks a lot about the question of interaction. Interaction is not just the capacity for a user to provide input to a system, but it's also the kind of pleasure that one can have using a technical object. And that kind of fusion between the function of the object and the aesthetic result of the object. And I think that there's something really very strong in the aesthetics of interactive art, in that kind of precisely what he says, perceptive, motoric and sensorial fusion when using a technological object. So I hope that you will read that text, and I will go into details about analyzing that text in the next feedback session, which is for ATEC 6331, Aesthetics of Interactive Art, because it relates also to this. But I think that it relates also very directly to 6300.
If I have a question, it will be Simondon talks about the aesthetics that is inherent of any technical object, or he's approaching does technicity as such has its own inherent aesthetics, or he's addressing the question of aesthetics upon technological object?
Well, then that's a good question. In fact, he's saying both, okay? Because he's saying that there is an aesthetics that is specific to technical objects, and that's the aesthetics of not just contemplation, but the aesthetics of action, the aesthetics of the use, the aesthetic of a perfect flow in the use of a technological object. And then he's saying that there's also a fusion between that flow of the usage and the visual or auditory appearance of the technical object. Okay. He says that a successful technological object, it's an object that actually fuses and merges together these two aesthetics.
Okay. That's a successful technical object.
Yeah.
Not a successful artistic and technical object.
Yeah, okay. Successful technical object. And I think it's probably a good way to start the discussion between the relationship between arts and technology. And I think that I will put that paper first in the next list of the papers to read for 6300 as well as for 6331, because it's not because it's a French philosopher and it's not a complex text from a French philosopher, and the English translation is really great. And that journal, Parasia, which is available online, is an excellent journal and contains the best translations I have ever read from Simondon and Stigler as well. So I definitely encourage you exploring the link that I have sent you. And it's not because the class is over that we need to quit discussing and talking about the interactions and fusions between arts and technology. Okay, so I will be posting the grades very soon, and if you're interested in the follow-up on that fusion of aesthetics and technicity, you're welcome to listen to the next broadcast. Thank you, have a nice